Hi, my name is Celeste, and my proposition is to abolish the death penalty due to the amount of flaws it has within the system. As of July 1st, 2015, 31 states still impose the death penalty, while 19 states abolished it. Since the death penalty is still imposed to this day, I want to discuss the many reasons why it should be abolished. My first claim states that the death penalty fails to effectively deter crime. And within that claim, I have my first topic as the mentally ill offenders that can't be prevented from offending due to their inability to function in a logical manner. Since 1983, over 60 people with mental illness or retardation have been executed in the United States. There are not only mentally ill patients in the death row, but most individuals on death row have brain damage or experience traumatic events sometime in their life. My first example of that would be the Eileen Warner's case. She killed 7 men in Florida between the years of 1989 and 1990. She wasn't found legally insane, although there were many signs of mental illness and traumatic disorders, which were not put into consideration before her execution in 2000. She claimed she was being physically harassed by the prison and that her meals were being poisoned. There was actually a movie released on December 17, 2003, based on a true story of this case, called Monster, casting Charlize Theron. My next topic I want to acknowledge is minors who are uneducated, inexperienced, and as minors your brain is not fully developed, which makes it inadequate to make rational decisions. Approximately 365 minors have been convicted and executed in the United States. 22 of these cases occurred after the death penalty was reinstated in 1976. My example for this would be the Gary Graham case, who was convicted at the age of 17 for murder. He pleaded that he was innocent, and there wasn't enough information or evidence found to prove he was guilty, although the court still sentenced him to death based on his criminal history and violence during his junior high years. He was executed in 2000. My second claim would be that the death penalty has a negative effect on the economy. My topic within that claim would be the high cost rates for capital punishment results in low funds. It is found that in the state of Texas, there is a spending on approximately $2.3 million for every case, with over 300 people still sitting in death row awaiting their execution. One report in California estimated that the state could save about $90 million each year if the death penalty was abolished. My next topic would be that the capital punishment leads to fewer resources. The high costs on capital punishment could be used for programs such as crime prevention, mental health treatment, education, and rehabilitation, victim services, and drug treatment programs. Studies also find that schools, libraries, public health, police, and crime prevention programs were ranked as higher priorities than the death penalty, which ties into my next topic, that jobs were actually taken away. New Jersey laid off more than 500 police officers in 1991. At the same time, it was implementing the death penalty, which cost an estimate of over $16 million in the New Jersey state. Money used for the death penalty system could go towards those jobs that were taken away from the policemen. My third claim would be that the justice system for capital punishment is flawed. The poor are more likely to be sentenced. Over 90% of people that got sentenced with the capital punishment had insufficient funds to afford an experienced attorney. Many say that if O.J. Simpson was poor and had an inexperienced attorney, he would be sitting on death row right now, guilty or innocent. My next topic would be that many cases were found that the innocent were sentenced for the death penalty. Since 1973, 123 people in 25 states have been released from the death row with evidence of their innocence. And also, my last topic for this would be found evidence of racial discrimination. In Pennsylvania, Louisiana, Maryland, and in the U.S. military and federal system, more than 60% of those on death row are African American. Many cases were found of incidents that during trial judges called the defendant and defendant's family members by the N-word. Also, the next topic would be that the death penalty is applied at random. With the death penalty, less than 2% of known murderers are sentenced to death. As a conclusion, over 2/3 of the states and the federal government have imposed an extremely expensive system of capital punishment, which has many flaws and hasn't substantially reduced the amount of crime or violence. This makes the death penalty ineffective, expensive, and mainly imposed on those that are either innocent, under the age of 18, African American, or mentally ill.
All right, Celeste, the proposition is phrased as a policy claim, so I think that's a problem. You need to argue about its effectiveness or that it presents some substantial harm to the country. That would be an appropriate claim of fact. The argument that it needs to be abolished definitely calls for an action, so that's a little bit problematic. There's no preview of what the supporting structure is going to be, and I think in this particular case that's a little more problematic because you have so many secondary points that you bring up, and often they are not clearly connected to each other, although sometimes they are tangentially connected to each other. I think it would help if we had a layout of where you were headed so that we could see how it fits into the big picture. Now, on the secondary points, you do signpost those secondary points pretty clearly, and they are actually usually phrased as claims of fact, so I thought that that was a little bit better, although the phrasing was problematic, I think, on the claim about whether or not it is, like I said, economically discriminatory or racially discriminatory. I think you need to have those claims written out more as declarative sentences. You present, there's a lot of factual data in the information that I don't think there's going to be a dispute on about the number of states that have the death penalty or don't have the death penalty, or, for example, a couple of the examples that you cite. Although I do think we need to have a little bit more data about when the cases occurred. The execution that you say about the minor that occurred in 2000, I'm not positive about it, and that'll be one of those things that I'm sure the response speaker is going to look at, but I think the Supreme Court ruled that executing people under the age of 18 or for crimes that they committed under the age of 18 is unconstitutional. So that may be a moot point at this particular time. The cost issues that you present, again, I know that you got this information from someplace. I just don't know where because it's not cited in the speech. And that's the problem with most of the evidence here. Sometimes you've got a reference to a piece of factual data that you don't give us any citation on. The New Jersey police officers, for instance, that were laid off, well, they were spending $16 million on the death penalty. I thought that was a good attempt to tie in a specific cost issue of the death penalty to something that would definitely be related in the criminal justice field. Of course, your data here is 24 years old, and so that makes it a little bit hard to see that this is a contemporary problem. I think that there might be some issues there. The data that you had on the number of people who've been released having found corroborating evidence to confirm their innocence. Again, I think you need to give us a source citation on that. I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying that you're not citing your evidence properly there, and that enhances its credibility. I thought that you did a pretty good job making inferences from the evidence that you had. The presentation's pretty solid. Like I said, the big problem, and you say, and it doesn't work. That was one place where there wasn't any evidence on that particular point. That's a very conclusionary statement, so you need some information on that point. All right, thank you.